China just put an $8 trillion price tag on the end of the Western world. While we are busy arguing about interest rates and housing prices, Beijing has quietly hit the go button on a plan so massive it makes the great financial crisis look like a minor glitch. You probably think you know what China's up to. You think it is about cheap toys or real estate bubbles. But you are wrong. In this video, I am going to show you exactly how this $8 trillion move is designed to pull the rug out from under the US and Europe, and why the markets you invest in might never recover. Most people believe China is a dying giant. The news tells you their population is shrinking, and their malls are empty. That is the common take. But here is the contrarian truth. China isn't slowing down. They are shifting. They are taking $8 trillion and moving it into a global system that completely bypasses the West. I've spent months tracking the data on this, looking at trade flows and secret banking shifts that nobody is talking about on the evening news. By the end of this video, you will see the three-step trap they have set and how it will trigger a collapse in Western buying power. If you have money in a bank or a stock market, you cannot afford to look away from this. Let's start with the first part of the trap, which is actually the most overlooked piece of the puzzle. Most people call it infrastructure. Beijing calls it the new Silk Road. But the reality is much darker. Imagine you are a small country. You need a port or a railway. China shows up with a check for billions. They don't ask questions about your politics. They just build. But there is a catch. The money stays in China because Chinese firms do the work. The country gets the shiny new port, but they also get a mountain of debt they can never pay back. When they fail, China doesn't just ask for the money. They take the land. They take the port. They take the resources. This $8 trillion move is buying the physical world piece by piece. Now, why does this matter to your stock portfolio in London or New York? Because China is building a separate world economy. They are creating a loop where they provide the energy, the transport, and the goods to the fastest growing parts of the planet: Africa, South America, and Southeast Asia. They are cutting the West out of the growth story. We are left with the old, slow markets while they own the future. But that is just the setup. If you think the infrastructure trap is bad, wait until you see what they are doing to the things you actually buy every day. This is the second point, and it is where the reality of the collapse hits home. We used to think the West would always lead in tech and green energy. We thought we would build the electric cars and the solar panels. That was the expectation. The reality? China has spent the last decade using hundreds of billions of that $8 trillion pot to own the entire supply chain. They don't just build the cars. They own the mines for the lithium. They don't just build the panels. They own the processing for the silicon. Look at the European car industry. For 100 years, Germany was the king of the road. Now, Chinese electric vehicles are hitting the market at half the price. Why? Because China controlled the supply before the West even knew there was a race. This is what I call the manufacturing flight. When China moves $8 trillion into these industries, they aren't looking for a quick profit. They are looking to kill the competition. If Western companies cannot compete on price because China owns the raw materials, Western companies go bust. When they go bust, the markets collapse. We are seeing the start of this right now with massive layoffs in the tech and auto sectors across Europe and North America. And here is the scary part. We are only in the early stages. But wait, it gets even crazier. There is a third step to this. Move that deals with the very thing in your wallet right now, your cash. For decades, the US dollar has been the king. Everything, oil, gold, cars, was priced in dollars. This gave the West a massive advantage. We could print money, and the world would take it. But China's $8 trillion move includes a massive push for de-dollarization. They are working with other big nations to trade in their own currencies. They are buying record amounts of gold. They are selling off their U.S. debt at a pace we haven't seen in years. What happens to a Western market when the rest of the world stops needing its currency? The value of that currency drops. Inflation goes through the roof. The prices of your groceries, your gas, and your rent don't just go up because of a bad crop. They go up because your money is worth less on the global stage. This is the financial Cold War that Beijing is winning while we are distracted by social media trends. You might be wondering, is there anything we can do? Or is it already too late? Those are the big questions. I'm going to break down the survival plan in a minute, but first, we have to talk about the belonging gap. Most of us feel like observers in this. We watch these big numbers, 8 trillion, 5 trillion, and it feels like a different world. But you are part of this story. Every time you buy a product that was made in a factory China owns, or every time you see the price of your home go up because of global inflation, you are feeling the ripples of this move. You are in the party, but China is the one who owns the house and the music. This brings us to the climax of the $8 trillion plan. It isn't just about money or cars. It is about a total shift in who sets the rules for the world. Think about how the world worked after the Second World War. The West set the rules. We decided how trade worked. We decided what was fair. China is using their massive capital to build a new set of rules. They are creating their own version of the World Bank. They are building their own internet systems. They are even creating their own satellite networks. When this $8 trillion move finishes its cycle, the West won't just be poorer, it will be irrelevant. We will be like a shop that nobody visits because a giant mall just opened up next door. That mall is China's new global system, and it is open for business. I want to share a story about a bridge. In a small country in Europe, China offered to build a massive bridge to connect two parts of the land. The local government was thrilled. They signed the papers. Fast forward 5 years, and the bridge is beautiful. But the country owes so much money to Beijing that they had to cut their spending on schools and hospitals just to pay the interest. This is a micro example of what is happening on a global scale. Multiply that bridge by 1,000, and you have the $8 trillion move. The West is like the guy who thinks he is winning at poker because he has a few big cards, but the guy across the table, China, has already bought the casino. So, how do you protect yourself? If the Western markets are headed for a long-term decline or a sudden collapse, where do you put your energy and your money? First, you have to stop thinking in the old ways. The old advice was to just buy and hold Western stocks. But if the underlying companies are losing their supply chains to the East, that strategy is a slow death. You need to look at where the growth is actually happening. You need to understand the commodities that China is trying to hoard. Copper, lithium, gold. These are the real winners in a world where paper money is losing its grip. Second, you need to stay informed about the secondary markets. These are the countries that are partnering with China but still have room to grow. They are the ones who will benefit from the new infrastructure while the old Western powers struggle with debt. And third, you have to be ready for the Great Reset. When the $8 trillion move finally hits the breaking point for the US dollar, there will be a massive shift in how we think about wealth. It won't be about how many digits you have in a bank account. It will be about what you actually own. Physical assets, skills that cannot be automated, and connections in the new growth markets will be the only things that keep you afloat. I know this sounds heavy. It sounds like a lot to take in. But the people who win are the ones who see the change before it becomes obvious to everyone else. The ones who saw the internet coming in the 90s, made fortunes. The ones who saw the shift to mobile in the 2000s won big. This shift, this $8 trillion pivot, is bigger than both of those combined. China isn't hiding this. They are doing it in plain sight. They are writing the checks, building the ships, and buying the gold. The only reason it feels like a secret is because Western leaders and media are too scared to admit how far behind we really are. They want to keep you calm, so you keep spending and keep the system going for just one more day. But I'm not here to keep you calm. I'm here to make sure you are ready. Let's look at the pattern interrupt in the global economy. For 50 years, the pattern was the West consumes and the East produces. We were the boss. They were the factory. But the factory has grown bigger than the boss. Now the factory is starting to consume its own goods, and it is starting to tell the boss what to do. The pattern is broken. If you keep acting like the old pattern is still there, you're going to get crushed. There is a concept in psychology where we ignore things that are too big to handle. It is called normalcy bias. We look at an $8 trillion move, and our brains say, that's too big. It won't affect my daily life. But that is exactly why it is so dangerous. It is like a tide coming in. You don't notice it inch by inch, but suddenly the water is at your neck. I want you to think about your own financial situation. If the markets dropped by 30% tomorrow and stayed there for 10 years because of a global shift in power, would you be okay? If the answer is no, then you need to start making moves now. This isn't just about being a doomer or waiting for the end of the world. It is about being smart. It is about looking at the scoreboard and realizing the game has changed. China is playing a different game with different rules and a much bigger pile of chips. The West is trying to play a short-term game. We look at the next quarter's earnings. China is playing a 100-year game. They are thinking about where they want to be in 2049, not just next month. That kind of focus is hard to beat, especially when it is backed by $8 trillion of focused capital. I have seen this happen before on a smaller scale. Look at what happened to the manufacturing towns in the US and the UK in the 80s and 90s. They thought their jobs were safe. They thought the world needed them. They were wrong. The world moved on, and they were left behind. Now that same process is happening to the entire Western middle class. Our jobs as the global managers of the world economy are being outsourced to a new system. So, what is the climax of this whole story? It happens when a major Western nation defaults on its debt, or when the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency. When that happens, the $8 trillion move will be complete. China will be the new anchor of the global system, and we will be the ones trying to catch up. I'm going to share a final tip that most people miss. Watch the gold markets. Not the paper gold you see on a screen, but the physical movement of gold. China has been importing massive amounts of it for years. Why? Because when a system collapses, people go back to what has worked for 5,000 years. They aren't just buying gold to look at it. They are buying it to back a new financial system that doesn't rely on Western banks. This move by China is the biggest transfer of wealth and power in human history. It is happening right now while you are watching this video. You can either be a victim of the collapse, or you can be one of the few who saw it coming and prepared. If you want to understand more about how to navigate these changes, you have to look at the underlying mechanics. You have to see the way the gears are turning. I've talked about the infrastructure, the tech supply chains, and the currency shifts. These are the three pillars of the $8 trillion move. But there is also a fourth pillar: information. China is moving to dominate the way the world shares data. From 5G networks to social media platforms, they are building the pipes that the world's information flows through. If you own the pipes, you own the truth. This is another way they are making the West irrelevant. We might have the best ideas, but if they own the platforms where those ideas are shared, they can turn the volume down on us whenever they want. This is a massive, multi-front war, and the $8 trillion is the ammunition. I want to remind you that while the news is full of noise, the numbers don't lie. $8 trillion doesn't just vanish. It builds things, it buys things, it changes things. If that money is being used to build a world that doesn't need the West, then the West is in big trouble. We have spent too long thinking we are the only game in town. We have become lazy. We have stopped building, stopped saving, and started just moving money around in circles. China hasn't. They have been working, building, and planning. The $8 trillion move is the result of that hard work. So, here is the plan. Step 1. Educate yourself on the real state of the global economy. Don't just listen to the talking heads on the news who have a stake in keeping the old system alive. Look at the trade data. Look at the BRICS alliance. Look at where the real growth is. Step 2. Diversify your assets out of just one currency and one market. If all your wealth is in US dollars or British pounds, you are betting your entire future on a system that is being attacked from every angle. Step 3. Focus on real-world value. In a collapse, the things that matter are the things people need: energy, food, transport, and raw materials. These are the things China is buying up with their $8 trillion. You should be looking at them too. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this to give you a head start. Most people won't realize what is happening until they see the closed signs on the banks or the hyperinflation at the supermarket. By then, it is too late. The time to act is when the sun is still shining, even if there are clouds on the horizon. China's $8 trillion move is the biggest challenge the West has ever faced. It is a slow-motion collapse that is picking up speed every day. But if you stay sharp, stay informed, and stay ready, you can do more than just survive. You can thrive in the new world that is being built. I've spent a lot of time breaking this down because I believe it is the most important story of our lifetime. It is the story of how the world is being remade. It is a story of power, money, and a giant shift that will affect your children and your grandchildren. Don't let the normalcy bias win. Don't think that just because things were fine yesterday, they will be fine tomorrow. The $8 trillion move has already happened. The money has been spent. The plans are in motion. The collapse isn't a maybe. It is a mathematical certainty if the current trends continue. Now you might be thinking, this is a lot of information. I need to go back and check some things. That is good. You should be critical. You should look at the Belt and Road projects. You should look at the gold reserves in Beijing. You should look at the market share of Chinese EV companies. When you do, you will see that I am not just making this up. The data is all there. We are living through a historical pivot. The $8 trillion move is the catalyst. The Western markets are the casualty. But you don't have to be a casualty. You can be the one who saw the wave coming and moved to higher ground. I want to thank you for sticking with me through this deep dive. It isn't easy to face these truths, but it is necessary. The world is changing, and the faster we accept that, the better we can prepare. In the next few years, we are going to see things that people thought were impossible. We will see old alliances break and new ones form. We will see markets that were too big to fail start to crumble. And we will see China's $8 trillion plan become the new reality for the whole planet. But here is the thing. Every time an old system collapses, it creates opportunities for those who are ready. The end of the Western-dominated era is the beginning of something else. It might be messy, it might be scary, but it will be full of chances for those who aren't afraid to look at the truth. I want to leave you with one final thought. The biggest risk isn't that China will move $8 trillion. The biggest risk is that you will do nothing. You will stay in the old system, hope for the best, and wait for someone to save you. But nobody is coming to save the old Western markets. They are buried under too much debt and too much history. Your future is in your hands. You have the information. You see the move. You know the consequences. Now, it is time to act. If you want to see how this plays out in real time, you have to watch the moves of the biggest players. Don't watch what they say. Watch where they put their money. Right now, the money is moving east. The power is moving east. The future is moving east. This $8 trillion move is just the beginning. It is the first domino in a long line. When it hits the ground, it will trigger a chain reaction that will change everything you think you know about the world. So I'm going to keep tracking this. I'm going to keep looking at the data and finding the secret shifts that the media ignores. Because in a world of noise, the only thing that matters is the truth. And the truth is that China has already made its move. The question is, what is yours? Everything I've just told you is completely useless if you don't have the right strategy to protect your own wealth. You need to know exactly which assets will survive the shift and which ones will vanish. That is why you have to understand the deeper mechanics of how money works in a crisis. Click on this video over here to see my breakdown of the best collapse-proof assets you can buy right now. It is the perfect companion to what we just talked about, and it will give you the tactical steps you need to take today. If you found this helpful, make sure to let me know in the comments what you think about China's move. Are they going to succeed, or will the West find a way to pivot? I want to hear your takes, but really, the most important thing is that you keep learning. Don't let the headlines distract you from the big picture. The $8 trillion move is the real story. Everything else is just theater. I'll see you in the next one.